golden brown, crispy pastry filled with a juicy, meaty filling. It's a Chinese meat pie, Xian Bing. Welcome back to Wok Wednesday. It's a wok less Wednesday because I'm doing a meat pie. And actually this Chinese meat pie is actually a northern Chinese, kind of more like a dumpling or flattened dumpling or pancake really. The pastry is very simple. I'll talk you through that. But first off, let's get on to the filling. Now the filling for this, you want to be nice and juicy. You want it to make your mouth water. And Sichuan peppercorns work really well with that. So I'm going to pop these into a medium hot pan and just toast those lightly for about a minute. Just be careful, you don't want to burn your Sichuan peppercorns. They can burn quite quickly. They can go straight into this pestle and mortar and then crush them. I'm going to add a good generous pinch of salt to that to make a quick Sichuan peppercorn salt. And I can use that to season my mix as I go. Now, I'm going to sort of try and make this as simple as possible to get that filling going as quickly as you can. I'm going to finely chop some spring onion, some ginger, and a little bit of onion as well, really, really finely diced. I'm just going to pop all of this back into that pestle and mortar, just so we can collect any extra flavour from that Sichuan pepper salt. Just give that a mix. And this just keeps it all nice and simple, everything in one place, you know, nothing too complicated here. I'm going to heat some oil, enough to sear that mix. So you're probably looking at a couple of tablespoons of oil on a high heat. When that oil is smoking hot, it's not dissimilar to creating a ginger and spring onion oil for Hainanese chicken or something like that. Once it's smoking hot, we're going to sear that, and then I'm going to add some Sichuan peppercorn salt. Smoking hot vegetable oil. I love that sound. Now this oil is what provides the first bit of sort of juicy feeling of the filling. The traditional way of doing this would be to use a fatty cut of beef and then finely chop it with your cleaver or blitz it up. I've just got some fatty beef mince here from the butcher. Now there's already quite a lot of flavour from that oil, but we're going to season this up with a few more sauces. I've got some oyster sauce, some Shaoxing rice wine, again to add a bit of juicy sort of texture and flavour, light soy, and some sesame oil. Remember, I've already added salt to the Sichuan peppercorn, so I'm not going to add any more salt, but I've got some white pepper here. Just a pinch of white pepper should do the job. Your hand's got to go in here. Give it a good mix through, get all that ginger and spring onion and onion oil into your meat. I'm also going to add a couple of spoons, rough spoons of water, because I want this to be really lovely and so juicy, as I say, when you bite into your pie. Now, Northern Chinese way, with your dumpling mix, you wouldn't really do this, but in Cantonese sort of like dim sum making, if you want to sort of tenderize the meat a bit more, you pick it up and then throw it back in the bowl. And I find that sort of brings the whole mix together a little bit more and takes out any grittiness of your minced meat. You want to do this about 10 times. I'm also going to enrich this with 1 egg yolk. And so we'll just get a really lovely texture that's very different to this sort of crisp edge of the pastry when I fry these. I keep calling them pies, and a lot of people do, but I'd say it's probably more of a pancake than a pie. Just mix that egg yolk in. This mix would make an amazing meatball, although it doesn't hold its shape very well. You'd have to cook it sort of lionhead meatball style and deep fry it. So that mix, quite sticky looking, is ready. So I've got some dumpling flour here, which is essentially a Chinese plain flour. So you can just use normal plain flour if you can't find this. I've got some hot water from the kettle, and I just mix in some oil there so it's easy to then mix into the flour. Pinch of salt, may as well put that in the water too. And then I'm just gonna start to make this very quick and easy dough. And the hot water makes this dough nice and pliable. But you can use cold water to make this sort of dough as well. It's just a little bit easier with the hot. Once you've got sort of 2/3 of your water in, it's good to get your hand into, or one of your hands into the dough and press in so you can kind of feel how much extra water you need. So you want just enough water to pick up all the flour in the bowl. And I quite like this dough slightly on the sort of wetter side of tacky, and so it'll have a nice crisp edge but a softish finish. You want to knead this until smooth. It'll take about sort of 3 to 4 minutes of kneading, something like that. Once your dough starts to cool, it's a lot easier to sort of knead without it sticking to your hands too much. And you should get to this nice point where the dough itself, as I say, is quite still a little bit sticky, but nice and smooth. I'm going to cover your dough with a little bit of oil and then cover again with a wet cloth in the over the bowl. You want your dough to sit for about 3 to 5 minutes. So the dough has had plenty of time to rest and it's now nice and relaxed. And I say this is kind of like a dumpling, but it's not as small as a dumpling. So you want to roll your dough out into an even cylinder. Now this is the traditional way to divvy out the dough, but you could, if you wanted, sort of really generously dust the surface with excess flour and then roll the dough out into one big sheet and then cut it into circles. I'm going to show you the traditional way. You want these pastries to be a good size because I want to be able to fill them generously. And then for ease, I'm not going to go the dumpling route. I'm just going to sort of roll these using my index finger and thumb into a nice simple sort of round mini cylinder, I guess. Once you've got your rounds of dough, then you can just, it's good to have some excess flour nearby so you can dust the surface and dust your hands. Just press your round down. And then I'm going to do it the traditional way, but the easiest way, if you don't know how, is just to roll it into a flat circle, like so. The traditional way, you twist your pastry using your spokes of your wheel, which are your middle finger and your thumb, and that's just going to twist using your index finger, just pulling it round away from the rolling pin, and then push in with the rolling pin like so. There are more detailed videos on the rest of the channel. You can just check out the gyoza or the dumpling videos and you can learn from them. You don't want it too thin for this because you want to make sure it's got a nice soft bite. So these are quite big, I'd say sort of giant dumplings really. And you want them nice and big because you want to be able to fill them with a good amount of meat. I've put sort of 2 tablespoons worth of meat into this. And the easiest way to explain this would just be to gather up the sides however you see fit and sort of squish them together and then just turn them, once they're squished, turn them upside down and shape them into a nice round ball. We'll push those down into the pan to flatten a little when we fry them. So these patties, I guess, have been all folded nicely, and it's quite simple. They look lovely and pillowy, and they are. So once they go in, you're on a sort of medium to high heat, and you just press them down gently, like so, to get the size that you want. I'm just going to bring that down to a medium heat now, because that oil is definitely hot enough, and I don't want them to burn whilst I'm cooking the rest. Each patty or meat pie needs a little bit of space between the other, just so it doesn't stick to itself. If you're worried about the heat, just use a spatula to press down. And that's why you want the dough to be sort of slightly on the wetter side when you're making it, so that it's nice and elastic and it doesn't break when you're pushing into it. You want to cook that for about 5 minutes on each side. So you want to just flip those after that first 5 minutes, and you get this lovely golden brown finish. You want that on both sides. Lovely and crispy, super light. Once both sides are nice and crispy, you just want to sit them on a bit of kitchen paper to drain off any excess oil. This is a northern Chinese street food, and you'd usually have big sort of pans with lots of these meat pies sitting right next to each other. Just the sight of them makes me excited. Let me just show you. I'm going to cut this open and show you how juicy it really is inside. I am literally salivating. That is the best meat pie ever. Don't forget, guys, if you like this recipe, you want to learn more, like, comment, ding, hit that notification bell, subscribe, and keep eating.